A very special thank you to the Rosenberg Library for hosting this in their Wortham Auditorium. It's hard to get this room, and they had some cancellations, so we were able to fit in, but they've been terrific in helping us get set up. Some of our staff will ride over here. We have some more in the back. We are live streaming this. We will have it's on our website, galvestonhistory.org. I think it's a backslash fire prevention or something like that. Fire safety. Okay, so you can find it. Also on that website, we have a couple of publications that we're going to put up for you. One of them is Fire Safety in Historic Buildings, put out by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. So this will be on there. You can download this. Also, Fire Suppression in Historic Buildings and Building Conservation put this out. So a couple of these are in there. We're going to have some shots on there of a house at 1826 Avenue K that we rehabbed a few years ago. That was, if some of you remember that fire, we acquired that property. We worked on it. It was about a 30% burn. So we restored that. We remilled some of the original materials inside. And then it sold. It has been in a nice family since then. And we are looking, you're going to hear discussions today, we are looking at some companies that do sprinkler systems, and we're going to try to vet some of those a little bit. A couple of them are words that we work with. I don't know how much they've done in residential work, but again, you're going to hear about that in a few minutes, and we can have some questions and discussions about that later on. I'm going to introduce the speakers. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to introduce the speakers. They're going to come up one after another. Then we're going to stop when they're finished, and we're going to have some Q&A. I'll field the questions. We'll answer those. They'll come back up. Since we are live streaming, we're going to repeat the question when it's answered, and we'll follow up with you on that. One of the things that makes Galveston really wonderful and terrific is that we have a lot of historic properties. Just was asked this morning, Catherine Gorman and I often are asked how many historic buildings are in Galveston, and we estimate that there are probably as many as 40,000 historic buildings on Galveston Island. That's including principal buildings and secondary buildings, we'll say at the back. But anyway, we have a great quantity, which makes us very unique and also creates very complicated relationships, which means properties real close to each other, which is what we saw. And the very significant tragedy that occurred on 24th Street in the Silk-Stocking district a couple of weeks ago. Fires are not unusual to Galveston. They're really not unusual to most urban communities in the country. We have a long history of those, and this year on our homes tour, which is coming up, we're recognizing the fire from 1885, which was about 40 blocks from Strand to the coast. And Catherine also reminds me that there was only one life lost in that fire. It was not from the fire. So anyways, that was a significant thing, and the fire marshal is going to talk a little bit maybe about that in a second. So anyway, our uniqueness of our community also makes us consider what we need to do for the future. We talk a lot about hurricanes. We'll be talking about that in May. But we haven't spent a lot of time talking about fire. And so that's what we're starting today. I don't think this is the end of this conversation. I think it's going to generate a whole lot more discussion for the future. So our speakers are going to be these. But first, let me say, Chief, you would raise your hand. This is our fire chief in the back, Chief Varela. He's got two assistant chiefs who are sitting on the same row with him. You're going to hear an introduction from them. But our speaker is going to be Chris Harrison, who is the fire marshal. If you've not met him, he's a terrific fellow most of the time. And you're going to hear him chat a little bit about fire in residential areas. And so he's going to be the lead-off speaker. And following that is our much-beloved Historic Preservation Officer, Catherine Gorman, on the front row up here. She's going to talk a little bit about some other things related. And then, as I said, we're going to do the Q&A. So with that, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you. Can you all hear pretty well? Good.
As he said, my name is Chris Harrison, the fire marshal in the city of Galveston. I work under Fire Chief Mike Varela, so on behalf of him and the command staff in the city of Galveston, I want to thank y'all for giving this opportunity for us to come and talk about fire safety. He's correct. I am not entirely unbearable, just mostly. So if I say anything that makes you want to throw me out of the room, please wait until the end, because I probably have something that's at least worth someone hearing. So I'll talk a little bit at the beginning about the Galveston Fire Department, just in case you weren't aware. We were the first paid fire department in Texas. We were founded in 1885. And as much as, like I said last night, as much as I would love to tell you that we were formed after the fire because there was a need to combat fire, we were unfortunately formed as a paid fire department just prior to the fire. And we've been getting better at what we do since then. One of the things that did come out of this, I did not mention last night, and we'll talk more about the way we change code. So I'm the code administrator for the City of Galveston. In the United States of America, much like the world over, we change codes and we get better when our consciences are shocked into doing so. One of the things that came out of the Great Fire of 1885 was the beautiful cedar shake shingle. I always mess that up. That were all over the buildings were one of the reasons that the fire communicated, because there was a stiff wind blowing at the time. So right afterwards, the City of Galveston mandated slate shingles. And then a little while later in 1900, if you know, there was this thing that happened in Galveston. If you've never heard of it, it was a storm. It was quite significant at the time. Unfortunately, one of the byproducts of that was those slate shingles then became weapons. And that's one of the things that caused some of the deaths. So we learn, it's a learning process, right? We learn as we go. So now when we do things like make you put different types of shingles on your home, we fasten them better. And we just are a learning organization. So the Galveston Fire Department, 1885. We're staffed by 121 members. 3 of those are the administrative chiefs that you see there on the back row. It's Fire Chief Mike Varela, Assistant Chief Mike Molas, and Assistant Chief Jared Hudson. They run all of the day-to-day operations from payroll and personnel decisions all the way down to taking command at fire, not taking command, but taking operational positions at fires like the one we had on 24th Street. So those are the men that run the fire department. The rest of it is my office, which is myself. I'm an assistant chief. I have a battalion chief and an engineer that work underneath me. We are the fire marshal's office, all 3 of us. We cover all approximately 5,000 businesses in the city of Galveston, and we try our hardest to get in and inspect them every year, and we'll talk more about that later. We have 2 administrative assistants. If you've ever called the fire department, Miss Jenna and Miss Nora, they actually run the fire department. Don't tell the chief. But we just do what they say. Those young ladies will gladly help you with anything you call with. The meat and potatoes, the heart of the fire department, is 111 members of the suppression staff. Those are the men and women that staff the trucks every day. They staff 6 engines, 2 ladders, and 2 battalion chiefs on duty every day. They work 48 on and 96 off. So we are here. We don't get sick days. I say individuals get sick days, but that position is mandated to be covered. So we are always at a minimum of 30 firefighters on duty protecting you every day. And then we have 2 medics that participate in our COAST program. That's our mental health response program. It's a collaboration between us, clinicians, and the Galveston Police Department. And that they're seeing great results there. And what they do is divert people out of the criminal justice system that are in a crisis. So that's your fire department kind of at a glance. We run approximately 8,000 calls per year. And of those 8,000 calls, this is what we deal with kind of the most by mandate. I mean, it's in our name, the fire department. But this is what the definition of fire is, in case you were ever wondering, which I know you weren't, but now you know. Fire is a rapid oxidation process. It's an exothermic chemical reaction, meaning it puts off heat and results in the evolution of light and heat in varying intensities. Those light and heat in varying intensities that you see are the flames, right? So that all sounds well and good, but as a BOI and a graduate of Ball High, I like pictures. So we have a picture here. This is rough crowd. There's a lot of participation in this, y'all. So there are 3 things it takes to have a fire burn. Fire can be considered by most people to be a living, breathing organism. It requires heat, a fuel source to burn, and then oxygen. If you take away any one of those 3 things, the fire goes out. And all of those are kind of self-supporting with that chemical chain reaction in the middle. That chemical chain reaction is what we're after as firefighters. We can stop the chemical chain reaction by taking away one of those 3 things, but we're after that chemical chain reaction. That makes us sound really smart, and we are. Just wait, we'll tell you. But no, I mean, that's kind of our job, and that's what we do. So we're here to fight fire. And how do we fight fire? Anyone want to venture a guess? I even included visual aids. of what the majority of the way what's the biggest medium, the most plentiful medium you think that we use to put out fire? Now, if you were here last night, don't answer. Give everyone else a chance. No, it's water, right? Because water is abundant, it's plentiful, and it's actually pretty good at what it does. It can remove the heat by cooling. It can the steam can limit the oxygen from reaching the fuel, and then sometimes we add things to it like foam, and we actually will cover the fuel. Or if we have to, and that doesn't work, we can use a myriad of different types of fire extinguishers. But all of these things, again, are how we combat fire, and we're just fighting that chemical chain reaction. So that's what we do. Thanks for the talk. So I was telling someone last night, and I mentioned it last night during the presentation, I'm, glasses included, I'm the code geek of the fire department. I spend most of my days staring at books. I have a library in my office, and if you ever want to know anything that you never wanted to know about fire, just come and ask me. And as Catherine would tell you, I don't like to talk a whole lot. I really do. So I'll talk to you for days about fire. But this is our experience with fire. And as fire prevention officials, we look for trends. And so what you'll notice here is these are 2023 trends. Now, it takes a little while for fire trends to be effective and parsed out because the majority of fire departments in the United States of America are volunteer departments. And all of the fire departments in America don't necessarily contribute to the United States Fire Administration, which gives this data to the NFPA, which then compiles it in statistics. So we're a little behind in that, which is concerning because sometimes our trends are behind the time. But when we start to see trends, we try to get ahead of those. And these are the trends that we're looking at. So you'll notice here, fires across the board are up approximately 10%. Now that's in about 10-year period. That's a 2014 number. If you go back farther, 20, 30, 40 years, you'll see that fires overall are actually down, which is a good pat on the back for Americans. However, when we start to see an approximately 10% increase in the number of fires that we're having, we now start to wonder, is what we're doing and patting ourselves on the back for actually working, or do we need to change something? So we begin to dive deeper into those fires, and we notice that with a 10% increase effective in fire, we have an almost 16% increase in home fire deaths. That's alarming. So that is something that we start to look into, and we'll start to talk about why some of the things that I'm going to tell you that you hopefully don't run me out of the room for are important. But it kind of highlights the fact, if you hear nothing else I say today, we are beginning to have an issue, and whether that is us becoming complacent or whether we need to change something, and we might be getting into that territory where our conscience is shocked enough to where we start to take a good hard look at what we do. And so that's what I hope to do here today. Injuries are down. That's good. One of the reasons that can be attributed, I'll go ahead and plug sprinklers now. You're going to hear a lot about fire sprinklers. I apologize, but they work. One of the reasons, and it's just one of many, but that number is coming down is because during fires, what we're seeing is less people being injured because of things like sprinkler systems. There is a slight uptick, if you really drill down into the data, in people in sprinklered buildings that are being injured and not killed during fires. But that speaks to the effectiveness of sprinklers because they're working well enough to where people feel confident enough to maybe, and we don't recommend going back in, but maybe going back in and trying to fight that fire a little, and they're getting minor injuries when they're doing so. Minor burns, cuts, scrapes, nicks, things like that. A little bit of smoke inhalation. So that's a positive. And then this loss number here, the biggest increase, a lot of times I'll hear, oh, well, that's just because inflation and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Tariffs, depending on who you voted for, but that's a whole nother story. You can laugh. Okay, don't. But no, the reason there's an asterisk there, and one of the reasons that is so high is because there are some big events involving wildfires in California and Hawaii. And I said last night, if you think home prices are high in Galveston, Texas, go visit Hawaii and try to buy a house and then come back and talk to me because it's insanely high over there. But the Maui fires are part of what drove that. So that's just some statistics on fire. Now, we'll drill down into home fires. Who can venture a guess, if you weren't here last night, or didn't watch last night of what causes residential building fires. What's the number one cause you think in America for house fires? Cooking. I heard some electrical. Space heaters. Okay. Who would say, so I'm hearing a lot of cooking. Like, who would say cooking? Show of hands. All right. What about electrical? It's cooking. And not by a little bit. I'm not telling you to go out and eat all the time. Please cook at home. I mean, I cook a mean takeout, but no, what it boils down to is unintended cooking. And so, you know, we have busy lives, right? You throw a meal on, the kids have homework, or the phone rings, or there's this really cool video on YouTube. You just can't put the video down. If you're like me and have kids in school and you're trying to help them with their homework, and I've forgotten more than I ever learned about algebra, I send them to go talk to their mom. But no, that's cooking fires, right? And it's unintended cooking fires. We're going to talk about a little bit about how to stop that later. What about number 2? What do you think comes in next? Electrical? Oh. Now this, as I said last night, this is not entirely, but this is largely an American problem. This speaks to, there's a young lady whose husband was a New York firefighter who was killed in a fire, him and part of his engine crew. And she speaks a lot about this, very compelling speech, great story of forgiveness and recovery. But when her husband was lost in a fire, it was because someone was moving out of an apartment and had left some pizza boxes and trash on top of the stove. So it was an accident, right? I mean, it happens. Like I forget stuff all the time. But in other cultures, and not saying that we need to do this, but in other cultures, there's some accountability there and some deep soul searching that's done. In America, it's okay to have an accident. It's okay to make a mistake and hurt, injure, or kill someone, and it just be an accident. It says a lot about who we are, I think, in the way that we react with each other and the way we react to fires. So sometimes a real hard look at, is what I'm doing the best thing to do right here? It is necessary. And maybe we can bring that number down. So I'm only going to go over the top 4 causes here, right? So next is heating fires. So you see, you guys are thinking about fire safety already. We're just going to give you some tools to kind of bolster that. Those heating fires include space heaters that are too close to combustibles. They include HVAC systems that maybe haven't been checked in a while. Maybe you have to go over and kick the furnace to make it come on. I'll talk a lot about, you'll hear me say this again, but in my world, those are called clues that you probably should hire someone to fix that. Don't just resolve things with a kick or a couple flicks of a switch to make it work. Eventually, when it wants to, it's supposed to come on demand. And so if you have natural gas or electric, either one in your home, heating systems, HVAC systems, all of these systems, they deserve some love and attention, just like you would give to your home or your loved ones. And then last, we do have electrical malfunctions. Electrical malfunctions are one that fire investigators love to pin fires on, but it's one of the harder ones to prove. So when we have to arc map and trace wiring and find little nicks in wires and things like that, it's harder to do, but it's worth doing because it helps us to identify exactly what the problem is. Whether it be a loose connection, a screw or a nail through a wire, wires that have just been rubbing together or lost their insulation, pests in a wall can do that. There are a number of things, overloading of electrical systems. I'll give you one of my personal stories, which is kind of painful to say as a fire marshal. So I was going to do some, YouTube expert maintenance on my home, changing out some light fixtures kind of thing. And so I had my wife go out back and flip the breakers. And when the right one's off, I'm going to tell her, that's the one, leave it off, and we're going to fix it. And so, good husband, I'm in there and sitting on top of the ladder like, what is taking so long? And she comes back in the house and she's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? She's like, I turned them all off. I'm like, well, go do it again. So she does it again. And then, of course, she's right. Nothing goes off. So I said, well, flip the main. So she flips the main, the power goes out. I change them. And then I think I should probably call an electrician, right? Because this is not right. Light fixtures aren't supposed to be direct wired from the panel. They're supposed to go through a breaker. So electrician comes. I'm at work, fire marshal. My lovely wife calls me. She says, the electrician just left. It was however much it was to fix the problem. I was like, okay, well, what was it? Was it a wiring issue? She said, no, we had 7 breakers in our panel that were failed hot. That means on those 7 circuits, not just outlets, circuits in my home, fire marshal, they were getting direct power and they would have never tripped had I had an electrical incident like a fire. Scary. My panel's outside. Corrosion is a thing. So, note to self, when I talk about maintenance later, make friends with an electrician if you're not, and have them come by your house and check your system, because electrical malfunctions do happen. All right. How can you protect your home? New or old? This is where I ask you, please just hear me out. Don't run me out of the room yet. I will say this up front. I don't know how much sprinklers cost. They're expensive, though. Thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, especially if you're retrofitting. I own that up front. I also own that I'm a hypocrite, because I'm telling you that you should probably install fire sprinklers in your home. But I had to make the decision to put a roof on my house rather than put fire sprinklers in, so I haven't done it yet. So as a fire marshal, I own that. But that's on my list of things to do. That being said, fire sprinklers work. I'm going to show you some numbers later, but I want to talk about the auto amendment first. Does anyone know what the auto amendment was or is? In the state of Texas in 2009, there was a state representative named Otto. And you know how the legislative process works? You want to get a bill passed, you got to get some friends, right? And you go make handshake deals, and you promise to support their legislation, and they promise to support yours, and you get your legislation passed. He had written a bill, wasn't very popular, didn't get passed, because someone in his constituency told him it would be a good idea to not allow municipalities to mandate residential fire sprinklers. So instead of getting a standalone bill passed, his staff and he crafted a rider on a plumbing licensing bill. So plumbing licenses, you hire a plumber, they have a master plumber on the side of their truck. The state law that covers their licensure has a small rider on the back end of it that talks about plumbing licensing for sprinkler systems. So in Texas, when we talk about sprinkler systems, we'll talk about the numerous kinds. There are standalone sprinklers, and then there are combination sprinklers. The combination sprinklers use the same water piping that goes to your faucets and toilets and everything else, and then they just put heads on them every once in a while that feed the fire sprinklers. Good idea, right? Less piping. A master plumber can put this in. That's what this bill did. But at the very end, they snuck in this line that said it is illegal in the state of Texas for a municipality. In September, when it became law, it went back to January of 2009. It's illegal for a municipality to require you in new construction to put a fire sprinkler in your home. Now, it's been in the fire code and the residential code since 2008. Sprinklers are a really good idea. Like, we agree about that. How many of you like the policies that sometimes you hear about come out of California? If you've ever lived in California, bought a car in California, done anything in California, they have some pretty strict safety regulations, right? They have required fire sprinklers for quite some time now. Look up Scottsdale, Arizona. There's some other places where they mandated sprinklers, and sprinklers work. But in Texas and a couple other states, we said they don't know what they're talking about, and I can't require you to put them in. So I said all that to say that someone asked originally, are you going to sit here at this meeting and you're going to tell us that we have to do all this and not have a way to pay for it? So, oh, no, absolutely not. I'm going to tell you it's a great idea. And I'm going to tell you that as a fire marshal, I'm going to do this in my house. But I'm also going to tell you that it's a decision that you have to make. I can't mandate that you do this. I strongly suggest that you do it. And I'm going to give you some reasons why. But your home is your castle. So you want to know how to protect your home? I'll tell you the number one way: you put a bunch of little firefighters in your house 24/7. How do I do that? Bingo. Install fire sprinklers. We'll talk about it. The next.
There's a couple of municipalities in Houston that do require you to put in sprinkler systems, the villages in Memorial.
You know what they don't have?
No.
Fires and fire deaths.
Yeah.
Well, I'll show you some numbers again. I'm quite good at that part. Second way is install smoke alarms. How many of you are familiar with hurricanes? Right? A hurricane. You know what a hurricane is, right? Do you know when hurricanes are coming? In 1900, they didn't have that advantage, and we see the result. But we know when hurricanes are coming. In fact, I saw an early model today. It's got no widespread support on it that said that there may be a hurricane next month. You know how those are. It's just kind of like during a holiday, the city of Houston or someone up in the media in Houston is going to put out that the beach water is bad in Galveston, right? I mean, it's just how it is. But no, you want early warning for a fire, just like you get for a hurricane, put smoke alarms in your house. Those little things sit up on the wall all day long and sniff for smoke. And they work great. And if they smell it, they start yelling at you, right? You ever burnt toast and you have one close to your kitchen, you know. And they're very loud for a great reason. Get up and get out, right? Because there's a problem. So install smoke alarms. They should be in every bedroom. They should be outside of every bedroom. They should be on every level of the home. And if you don't know how to put them up or are wondering if yours work or not, or if you need a few or whatever, we have a way to fix that. We have two programs in the city of Galveston. One of them is the Senior Smoke Buster program. If you own your home and you're over 65, you call the fire department. We'll come out, evaluate your house, see how many smoke detectors you need, put them up for you. And if you don't want or can't change the batteries, the ones we have now are 10-year sealed batteries, so you don't have to worry about that. You call the fire department back and we'll do that for you too. If you are not a senior citizen and you say, well, I want those too, the American Red Cross has generously donated smoke alarms to us as well. The first group comes from the Insurance Council of Texas, and we thank them, and we also thank the Red Cross for supporting us. We'll come and install these residential smoke alarms for you, free of charge. We just ask that you give us your signature on a piece of paper that says if something happens that we're not entirely responsible for it. If you've never signed a liability release form, you have a cell phone, you know that stuff that you scroll past real quick and hit okay? Yeah, that's the liability release. So we just ask that you do the same thing on your smoke alarms. But we'll come and do those for free. Like I said, the only ones that we won't change out for you are ones that are hardwired together in your electrical system. We'll talk about electricity later, but me and electricity don't really get along sometimes. So those we can't change out, but an electrician can. And then, residential fire alarms. There are even security alarms that you can add on to if you have a security alarm that will add smoke detection into your security alarm. Some of those are even wireless, so you don't even have to run cabling. But those are all options. Next is install fire extinguishers. And I should put a slash there. Fire extinguishers and/or fire blankets. We use fire blankets that was brought up last night. We use very big, very heavy, very expensive fire blankets to put out electrical vehicle fires. But the concept of smothering a fire with a blanket, you probably remember like high school labs and stuff had them. It's a thing. But if you're not feeling it, then feel free to run out of the building and call 911. You get a big red truck with a bunch of firefighters on it. That's all we do. And believe it or not, I mean, it's not that we're happy that it's happening, but we're happy to go to work. Fire is just something that is in our blood. So let us come do our job. We'll be glad to do it for you. But if you have fire extinguishers or you need fire extinguishers, we can certainly give you some options on those. We don't service fire extinguishers if you have them. You do have to have a commercial company do that, but you can bring them by and we can at least take a look at them and tell you whether or not they'll work in what you're trying to do with them. So. And then electrical system upgrades. We talked about electricity. If you have an older home or older wiring, those things, that wiring heats up and it cools down and it expands and it contracts and houses move and screws comes loose and, wiring can get rubbed on, things like that. So having a qualified electrician come and look at it is a good idea. My experience with my breakers, I tell you, nothing was wrong in my house. All the light switches worked. Flip the light on, lights come on, turn it off, they go off. The power's not going out. But it's because I was also getting a direct feed on 7 circuits throughout the majority of my house. So an electrician found that for me. So in addition to maintenance, they can upgrade things. How many know what a GFI or GFCI plug is? Usually in the bathroom or the kitchen, right? They're near wet locations. And that's going to fix every electrical problem you have in your home, right? Shake your head no. Those are only for grounding problems. That's why you find them near water. So when it senses a bad ground and the system's not grounded correctly, it's going to shut the power off, right? Well, arc fault or AFCI is another type of technology. It actually handles arcs between the circuits. So think like sparking inside the walls that you can't see that is really bad and results in a fire. So both are good. You can get them on plugs. You can get them on breakers. You can get them individually. You can get them together. There's a myriad of technology out there, but please talk to an electrician about that kind of stuff because it's been out there for a long time. This is not new technology. None of this is, including surge protection. Now, I got a chuckle last night. I know here we never have issues with power blinks or the power going out or fuses blowing or anything like that, right? Because we live in a perfect world. Salt air is not a thing that corrodes everything, including plastic. But surge protection is also real. And what that does is it just knocks down all the extra power coming in. If you have a surge of power coming through your wiring, it'll knock all that extra stuff that's not supposed to be there down to ground and safely, dissipate it so that you don't blow up TVs, outlets, blow fuses, things like that. But all of those systems can be installed, again, either on the devices or on the panels. So qualified electrician, electrical system upgrades, good thing. Having a plan to escape. This one is free. Not just because there's a grant program, because all this requires you to do is think. There are a myriad of websites out there. We have some pamphlets available at the fire department that will help you draw out your home, identify hazards in there, and if you need help, call the fire department. We can come by and help you. Now, we're not going to come in your house and critique everything you do, and we're not there to look down our noses or anything at you. We're there to help you figure out how not to need us in an event. But if you do have an event, you get out and call us, you should have a plan on how to do that. How many of you went to school at some point in your life? Right? How many of you remember fire drills? Some of us may even remember civil defense drills. My mom and dad tell me about those all the time. I didn't do those, but I did do fire drills. Fire drills all the time, right? Did you ever wonder, why do we do fire drills? There aren't fires in schools. Like that's not a thing anymore. But do you remember what happened during a fire drill? Usually it was like the end of the day, right? So they could get rid of the kids early. I didn't do that. I told you, electricity doesn't like me.
Surge.
But during a fire drill, usually you're instructed to get up in an orderly fashion. You line up. You exit the room. Teacher usually closes the door. You go outside far enough away from the building. They check to make sure everybody's there, and eventually someone tells you can go back inside. And you did those. If you do those in the state of Texas, it's once a month, and no schools are exempt. And we do those every year we're in school. We're pretty good at fire drills, right? I misspoke last night. I'll apologize. I said there are hundreds of fires every year in school. I was lying. There are thousands. There are tens of thousands of fires, reportable fires in schools every year. Did you ever hear that number? I was shocked. I'm the fire marshal. I'm a numbers guy. I looked it up this morning. It's like 15,000+ fires a year on average in America. And you never hear about them. They're non-events. A lot of them are set. Number one place for fire in a school is in the bathroom. But no, you never hear about them because they're non-events, because we know how to react to fires in schools, because we have a plan and because we practice it regularly. That might work at home. We should probably do that. So if you need help developing a plan, please call us. Again, we have pamphlets. There's tons of stuff online, U.S. Fire Administration, FEMA. National Fire Academy has some stuff on how to create a home plan. You can have like a sheet, or some of them recommend that you put together like a little bag that you like place by the bedside or by the door, and you grab it on the way out. And it's got important phone numbers, bank account numbers, things that you might forget in the case that there is an actual fire. But you get out and then you stay out, and you wait until one of the nice firemen comes in the big red truck and tells you that everything is fine for you to go back in. And if it's not fine, you just tell us where the stuff is you need inside, and we'll go get it for you. But have a plan to get out. Someone else will probably remind you again of that later. Have a plan to get out. Fire rated construction. In older homes, this is a thing, right? Homes that were built in the late 1800s and early 1900s are not built the way that they build houses today. They're not. The materials are different. The craftsmanship is different. The inherent fire safety features inside of them are different. The interior finishes are different. The furniture is usually different, right? In older homes, a lot of times you're going to have natural fibers. You're going to have, maybe cotton coverings on some of the walls, things like that. All these nice, wonderful old things. They're natural fibers. They burn and react with fire differently than newer materials do. The older wood used in homes, dimensional lumber, is stronger than lightweight construction now. Now, we'll throw sheetrock up on a wall now, and it'll hold back a ton of fire. It's wonderful stuff. Like whoever invented sheetrock, I'd like to go back and shake that guy's hand, because sheetrock is an amazing invention. It holds back a ton of fire. But then when it does get past that, or it fails or defeats or whatever, the lightweight construction that's in those homes goes quick. So you'll hear me say later, oh, one of the things that people usually tell me about fire sprinklers is, I have a newer home, I don't need all that stuff. Oh, wrong. Fires burn faster and hotter in newer homes than they do in older homes. They're more spectacular as far as the looks of things and how far they can spread in older homes because of things like balloon frame construction. When you have structural members that are one span and they go from the foundation all the way to the roof and there's no fire blocks in between, I mean, there's nothing to impede the fire travel, right? Smoke, heat, all those things can have the run of a house. They can have a hold of the structure before you ever notice the fire, then call us to come put it out. So what can you do? Well, you can retrofit, right? You can do things like change some of the exterior cladding on the house, some of the siding. Catherine, plug your ears. Despite what the Landmark Commission might say, there's good things about newer construction materials. They may not look the right way or whatever, but I think we're doing a good job of kind of bringing that stuff around. But if you change the exterior of a home, if you'll notice, new homes and older homes, they're all close together. But the newer homes, when we seem to have fires in some of the newer construction, we don't have the multiple structures burning that we see in older structures because they have these exterior materials that hold fire back. In fact, you're required, depending on how close you are, if it's the closer you get, the higher the rating has to be, up to including like townhouses. You know what makes a townhouse a townhouse? You share a wall with your neighbors. Like that's pretty close. I don't know about you, but it's a firewall. So construction, exterior construction, interior coverings. I talked about sheetrock. Things like insulation in the walls. Now, I actually looked this up. The question was asked last night, can I insulate the walls on my historic home the way newer houses are? You can. Again, it's completely a function of how much money you want to spend, but if not done right, you can actually make your home sick. I don't know what y'all call it. You can make the home sweat more. Like older homes breathe, right? That's one of the reasons they had balloon frame construction, because air circulates in there. So you have to be very careful. But you hire a builder that knows how to do that, and you can absolutely do that. You can add fire blocking in there. You can, if allowed in certain circumstances, you can like change the windows to fire rated windows rather than, now look, fire rated windows don't look as cool. They're not the old like leaded glass, like glass that sometimes bows out at the bottom. because it's settling over time. I mean, old windows are just really neat, right? There are some that look old, but they have some newer properties in them. Window shutters, if allowed, fire shutters. There's all kinds of things you can do, but a good contractor can help you with that. So fire rated construction is another way that you can protect your home. And lastly, we've talked about it more than once, maintenance. Maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. All of these things are systems. All systems eventually fail, or they begin to degrade. Sometimes they just need a little tweaking. Sometimes they need replacement. Sometimes they just need a little love and attention. Aluminum wiring was a thing after knob and tube in like the 1960s. My parents had aluminum wiring in their house up until Hurricane Harvey. Every once in a while you had to go and tighten up all the connections. Aluminum wiring worked great until it didn't, but you just had to, it's something you had to keep doing, right? If you own a home with paint on the exterior of it, does your paint last forever? No, you have to redo it every once in a while, right? It's a system. It needs maintenance. So maintenance is how you can protect your home. Talk about deaths again one more time. This chart is the civilian fire deaths in 2023. Now it's just a snapshot, and I realize it's 1 year, but again, when we talk about trends, we talk about things that scare us. I mentioned earlier, remember, there's 3 of us in the fire marshal's office. We're the primary inspectors of buildings. We also have engine company inspections that are done by our firefighters. So we have some 50 or more inspectors in the fire department. Our focus in the fire department, our legal ability to go out and do inspections, our right of entry is right there. This one too. So we'll take these two and add them together. That's 15% of the deaths. So in the buildings that we inspect on a regular basis, the buildings that have the strictest codes that they're applied to them, they're mandated by law to do things like sprinklers and smoke alarms and fire extinguishers and all that, not the suggestions that I'm giving you. Those account during fires for approximately 15% of our fatalities. And this is nationwide, it's not in Galveston. But that big one right there, those are the buildings that I can't get in by law. Those are the buildings that you own and you live in and you are responsible for. I can give you suggestions. I can give you great ideas. I can give you anecdotal stories from the things I've seen over the last 25 years in the Galveston Fire Department. But I can't make you do anything unless you're trying to set your home on fire. That's arson. That's a crime. I can fix that. But all the good ideas in the world coming from the fire department cannot fix the fact that 68% of the people that died in fires in 2023 died at their residence or in a single family or 2-family dwelling.
Now, is this older homes or?
All just
Homes, period.
homes.
Because all the new codes are much better than they were, obviously.
One of the last fatalities I worked was in a newer home.
Really?
It's across the. Now I will say this: the building coalition will tell you that one of the reasons that Mr. Otto was correct, and we don't need sprinklers in houses, is just that newer homes are great. They don't need all that stuff. They still burn, y'all. And when newer homes burn, remember I talked about those natural fibers you see in older homes, the good dimensional lumber. It's not treated lumber. It's not pressboard lumber. It's not oriented strand board that's put together with glue. Because when all of that stuff burns, your nice carpet, your plushy couches, we all have them in our house, right? Most of those are made out of petroleum byproducts. Petroleum being oil. The way we make it fluffy and cushy is we inject air into it, and we make a nice foam cushion with lots of, think Swiss cheese, oil, and now set it on fire. And the smoke that comes off of it is pretty toxic stuff. You ever heard of phosgene gas? Cyanide? That sound familiar? Common byproducts in fires these days. That smoke that you're breathing, that you don't have smoke alarms and didn't get early notification of, or that fire sprinklers will put out for you. It's all of that stuff and more.
Like California doesn't let you sell that stuff.
Allegedly.
Well, I see it on the bags all the time.
It's kind of like the mattress, the tag on the mattress, right? But speaking about that, when we have things that have tags on them that say don't do this, you know why those tags are there, right? Someone did it. So, all right, sprinklers. I'm not going to read all of this to you. I mean, I'll leave it up there for a while. The too long didn't read version of this is sprinklers work. They work very well. They save lives and they save property. 1% of all the deaths in home fires happen in buildings that had sprinklers in them. 1% of all the deaths, the buildings had sprinklers in them. And a lot of those are attributed to the person that was injured or killed being intimate with the fire itself. So setting it, being what was, like maybe smoking in bed kind of thing, you're laying on the bed. I mean, very close proximity, so close that the fire had time to do the damage it did before it activated the sprinkler system. 1%. Yeah, but okay, but fires still get big and bad, right? 96% of the fires in sprinkler buildings were confined to the object or room of origin. Sprinklers work. What are some myths? If one goes off, they all go off. You seen the movies? I want to get a guy to come out of that room. I can't get him out, so I shoot the sprinkler head over here, and they all go off in the building. That doesn't work that way. Each one is individually controlled. The temperature has to reach the set point, usually 155 degrees at that head. If that head doesn't control it, it goes to the next one. Sprinklers will leak and cause damage. Sprinklers are just a network of piping. If you have plumbing in your home, you have the same fear. Sprinkler system's not going to add to that. It's the same water, the same pressure going through pipes that can even be the same pipes. What's worse, water damage or fire damage? You ever gotten an important document or anything wet? You can dry it out, right? I can't unburn things. We're pretty good at what we do in the Galveston Fire Department. We're the best fire department in Texas. Arguably the nation, but we can't unburn stuff. Sprinklers can stop it from burning though. Sprinklers will freeze in winter. Again, if you have plumbing in your house, you have the same concern. It's not going to add to it. There you go. Newer homes are safer. I don't need sprinklers. We'll talk statistics. Come by my office and sit down. I'll show you some pictures, and then you'll leave a changed person. You might hate me for it, but that's okay. I have smoke alarms, so I don't need sprinklers. Smoke alarms will definitely tell you there's a fire. Sprinklers will put them out for you. And here's
Does
some.
it help with insurance?
It can, and we're going to talk about that later. Smoke alarm efficiency. Smoke alarms, right? You got to know about the fire. They're there. The death rate per 1,000 in reported fires was 50% lower when you had smoke alarms in the house. Again, I can't tell you how many fatalities I've worked over the last 25 years where people didn't have something as simple as a smoke alarm in their house. It's egregious. Call us. We'll give you one for free. We'll install it for you. You're like, well, look, Chris, I can lessen the fire damage by 50% from just installing smoke alarms. I can make it almost zero by smoke alarms and sprinklers. I didn't make this stuff up. I'll give you my source documents if you want to come have a talk about it. So what are the takeaways? Fire is everyone's fight, right? It shouldn't just me coming and talking to you about it. If you have questions, come and ask. We'll give you some examples. We'll give you some ways. We'll point you down the road to make this your fight as well. You control your home. I'm not going to tell you to do anything. I'm going to tell you you should, and then I'm going to help you get there, but you control it. You have options. Sprinklers and smoke alarms are the best, and we can't overstress the maintenance portion of it. Please take care of what you have. Thank you for your time. Fire Marshal's office is right down here at Fire Station number 1 across from City Hall. That's the number. That'll get you Miss Nora or Miss Jenna, the ones that run the fire department. And then they'll come and tell me that I need to tell you something. I have cards later if you like one. We can be reached by email. Come by, visit the station. We'll gladly give you all the information that you would want or need about fire. And again, thank you for your time. That would be.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
That was really, really informative. We're going to do questions after my presentation. My presentation is going to be only a few minutes because I know that we all really want to get to having our questions answered by Chris, especially. So I'm Catherine Gorman. I work in the Development Services Department at the city, and I work in both permitting and historic preservation. So I'm both the Assistant Director over planning and permitting, and then also the Historic Preservation Officer over the historic districts and Galveston landmarks. I'm going to talk to you about some practicalities of fire sprinkler systems, the permitting process, and then we're also going to talk about some financial incentives that the city has that sprinkler systems can be a part of. So really your first step in getting a sprinkler system is hiring a company to do it. So there are companies that specialize specifically in fire suppression systems. So you won't need to worry too much about permitting. The company will do it for you. But I wanted to go over some practicalities and some terminology that you might not be familiar with that you might need to know. So the first thing is flow test. A flow test is the first step in designing a sprinkler system. It's performed by our Public Works Department. And what it does is it measures the available water in your vicinity. And it tells the sprinkler system company if upgrades are needed, if you need to get a bigger tap, if you need a booster pump or a tank to hold the fire water. Pumps and tanks are most common in commercial fire sprinkler systems, but an upgrade in your water line might be required for a residential permit system. The other thing that you will need is a backflow preventer. This is required on the fire suppression line. And what it does is it prevents contamination of the city's water supply. It's a one-way valve. So if there's a sudden loss of pressure, water that's contaminated by rust or chemicals or just stagnant water can be pulled back into the city's drinking system. That's what we don't want. So you have to have a backflow preventer. That has to have an annual inspection by a specialized fire suppression backflow inspector. A line of work I did not know existed a few days ago, but this is a specialty. The city will notify you of your annual inspection, the need of it, and we do keep a list of people who are qualified to do these fire suppression backflow inspections. There are a couple of permits that are required from the Development Services Department. You'll need to get a plumbing permit. That's because you're connecting to the city's water supply. And then a residential building permit if you're having to open up walls, move things around inside in order to do the work to prepare for the installation of the system. And then you'll get a fire suppression system permit from the fire marshal's office. There are fees associated with these permits. The plumbing permit is a minimum of $25. A residential building permit is $300. The fire marshal fire suppression system permit base fee is $125. Where you might get into some expenses if you have to upgrade your tap. So a regular residential water tap is 5/8 of an inch. If the flow test says that that's not big enough, that you need more space, then you might have to go to an inch. And you can see that that cost is fairly significant. It's $3,500. After the work is done, then there will be a couple of inspections. The building inspectors will come and look at the plumbing work, make sure that that was done correctly, and then also the building work. The fire marshal will come and inspect the fire suppression system themselves, and then this fire suppression backflow inspector will come and make sure that that backflow preventer was installed correctly. And that's a third-party review. They provide a report to the city that we keep on file. Okay, so those are the practicalities of permitting. We'll talk a little bit about financial incentives. So the city does not have a program that's specific to fire sprinklers. But we do have one program that's called the Substantial Rehabilitation for Historic Properties. So who here in the audience lives in a house in a historic district or that's designated as a Galveston landmark? Well, that's a good number. So you all are qualified to participate in this program. So we'll go over it. So this was adopted by City Council in 2015, and the purpose is to encourage rehabilitations of historic properties. So you are qualified if you're a Galveston landmark. Galveston landmarks are individually designated buildings, typically located outside of historic districts. I live in a Galveston landmark, or contribute to a historic district. You can be used for residential or commercial structures. The threshold for participation in the program is that you have to spend at least 50% of your structure's value, according to the Central Appraisal District, on qualifying items, on things that prolong the life of the house. So this is a big renovation that this program is established for. We'll go over a case study so you can see the practicalities of how this all breaks down. So if you invest that amount of money, at least 50% of the value of your structure, then your benefit is a tax freeze. So the city will freeze your appraised value for the city taxes only for a period of 10 years. So your appraisal will continue to go up. It'll go up for the other taxing entities, but for the city's portion, it'll remain that the amount that it was appraised on the day you applied for the program. And that is in place for 10 years. It is transferable to new owners, so if you sell within that 10-year period, then you can pass it on to the next person. I will say, and I left this out last night, that if you're over 65, you already have your amount frozen, and there is no additional benefit. So if you've gotten to that age, there's no benefit to you to participate in this program. So the qualifying improvements, the things you have to spend that amount of money on, like I said, have to extend the life of the house. So it's things that are like roofing, foundation, and siding work. It's not things that are purely cosmetic. So it's not your nice new kitchen cabinets. It's really things that are going to help the building become stronger and continue contributing to our districts. Here's where the fire sprinklers would come in, because they would be a qualifying expense. Things like electrical, plumbing, and HVAC systems are qualifying expenses, and fire sprinklers would be as well. Energy efficiency improvements count towards it, and so does sweat equity. So if you're doing some work yourself, you can count that money that you can pay yourself and count that towards your amount spent. There are a couple of steps. This goes over the process. The first step is called tax eligibility. You submit a form to me with your scope of work and your budget. I review the scope to make sure everything is conforming, and then review the budget to make sure that you're meeting your threshold. Then you go off and do the work. There's no time period for that. You can take as long as you'd like. And then when you're done, you come back and make an application called tax verification. And that's when you show that you spent the amount of money that you said you did. And you do that in the form of canceled checks and credit card statements, Venmo transactions, to just prove that that money was spent. That's reviewed by the Landmark Commission, which is the reviewing body for the historic districts, and then finally approved by City Council. And after that, we draw up a tax agreement, and that's filed with the Central Appraisal District. And then your taxable value goes back to what it was when you applied. So we've got a case study here. This is a house in the Los Bayo Historic District. This was just verified as a participant in the program last week by City Council. So you can see their numbers. So here's their CAD value, total CAD value in 23 when they applied. We subtract the land. That gives us this number here. We divide that in half, and here we come with the threshold to participate. So it's 50% of the structure only, not the land, and that was $138,000. So these folks submitted documentation that they spent $234,000. This was a really significant project. But, and Chris was telling us that the cost of sprinkler systems is so variable. But if you're spending $234,000, maybe another $15,000, it's not outside of the realm of possibility. So this is their benefit. So since they applied in 23, their value's already gone up to almost $600,000. So now, for city purposes, it'll go back to $340, and it'll stay that way for 10 years. So assuming some increases over time, without the tax program, these folks would have paid the city $25,000. But under the current program, the tax-frees are going to end up paying the city $14,000. So they're saving $11,000 over 10 years. And that's not paying for the project, but it's worth filling out a couple of forms, tracking your expenses, and going to a couple of meetings. And this could also offset a portion of the cost of doing your sprinkler system. And then there's some other financial benefits that are not associated with the city, but are just kind of in general. There are some insurance benefits. There could be a reduction of up to 15% in your homeowner's insurance, depending on your insurance company. Just the reduced risk can make the buildings more insurable and more attractive to insurance companies. And then loss mitigation incentives. Your insurance company may have a program where they give you a credit, or they have some other financial benefit for having put in the sprinkler system. And then Chris was showing us how reduced damage you get from a fire, and of course reduced death. Nobody wants that. So a fire loss with sprinklers could be up to 90% less than a fire in a home without sprinklers. So that is lower repair and replacement costs, if God forbid you have a fire, and then a shorter recovery time and less loss of contents. There are things in your house that are irreplaceable. And then increased marketability. Fire sprinklers could be really attractive to people, especially folks who have small families or they're elderly and they're really safety conscious. So it can be more marketable and might have increased property values. Okay, so this is my contact information. I work in development services. We're in the new building at 30th and Market, 3015 Market, called the Public Works Facility, but we're there too. And then here's all of my contact information if you have any questions about permitting or historic preservation in general. And then we'll invite Dwayne back up and we'll start doing questions.
Okay, thank you all. We're going to field some questions here. The chief, you want to come up? Chris, you want to come up? You can all come. All the chiefs can come up if you want. All right. So we're going to take some questions. Anybody got something you're burning to ask? Okay, right here. Okay, we'll start here.
I was late. I was just wondering if they ever found out the cost of the fire ball.
You want to talk about?
Sure. So the question was whether or not we've determined official cause for the fire. The Galveston Fire Department report will remain as undetermined cause. And what that means is, of the four main causes of fire, we cannot either rule out or specifically pinpoint one over the other. I can tell you that we do not believe it was arson at all. So I know that there are some ongoing insurance investigations on the private side that are looking into building systems. And so it was, in this case, another one of those tragic accidents, it appears, that we talk about. But the official report from us will say undetermined, barring any further information.
Next question, over here. Yep.
Our breaker box did the same as yours. When we opened our breaker box, they were all burned out. Our breakers, when our electrician took it out, they were all burned out.
Maintenance is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and I thought my blinking lights were Stewart's, and I was really happy. I'm talking to Ghost, and he goes, I'm gonna talk to an electrician. And he had to rebuild a whole breaker box. Like, because he said they don't even make anything. That's how old your house is.
Okay, repeating the value of checking your breaker boxes. Okay, anybody else got a question? Okay, over here.
What's the difference between a hardwire alarm and the battery?
So the difference between a hardwired smoke detector and a battery-operated standalone smoke detector, hardwired smoke detectors, which are required in retrofits and new construction now, are powered by the building's electrical system as a primary source of power, and they also have a battery in them for if the power goes out. Additionally, they're wired or linked together so that if one goes off, they all go off, much like an alarm system. Same technology, the same technology for transmission, but they do amplify the notification, right? Because instead of one smoke detector going off or smoke alarm, they all go off at the same time. Even if they're not triggered by an event, a smoke event, they're still going to sound.
Okay.
When
Go ahead, yours, yes, go ahead.
When trees become tangled up in alleys, and they don't belong to the property owner, who's responsible? Because we had a fire after Beryl, because it was a downed palm tree, and I had called Reliant, the electric company, multiple times because of flickering lights, and I saw the tangle of the electric wire, but they never took responsibility for, before the fire happened.
So the question is, if trees are tangled up in lines, who's responsible for that? It's really an easement discussion. Centerpoint won't take necessarily responsibility for it, but they do have the right to go in because they don't own the land. They just have a utility easement. They have the right to go in and mitigate that.
Have we asked them to do it, or they, multiple times over a 5-year period?
Usually, our relationship with them has been that when we report things, kind of like fire hydrants, if we report fire hydrants that are not working in public works, they fix them. The same with power issues. So if you are noticing those kind of things in Centerpoint, you're not getting traction with them, call the fire department. Maybe we can help.
Okay.
The fire department was very good. They were there in a minute.
Okay, a little bit of a question here. Go ahead.
With all the generators, gas-powered generators, are you noticing any problems with fires because of those?
Gee?
No, we're not actually. Yeah, the question is, are we seeing an uptick in fires from generators? No, we're not. I think one of our main concerns, and Chief Harrison, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're looking into electric vehicles. Those are like the uptick trends of what we're concerned about right now because it's new technology, right? And it's new to firefighters. And sometimes those electric vehicles, whenever they catch fire, they go into something we call thermal runaway. The gases they produce are very harmful to all of us if we breathe in those. So that's something new, and we see those as trending more than anything right now, and that's what we're looking into. So, thank you.
Okay. Next question. Yes.
Is there anything you would recommend you do for your home for hurricane preparation before you leave your home specifically to prevent fires that happen during hurricanes?
Okay.
Sure. So home preparation tips to try to mitigate fire hazards before they happen during a hurricane evacuation. Besides gathering all the things that are important to you that in case there is a catastrophic event, I would say one of the biggest two things that you can do is natural gas shut off and electricity shut off. If you shut the main breaker off coming in, that stops power from coming from the pole into your home. And the same with the gas. You can shut off the gas at the meter. And that keeps gas from traveling throughout your home in the transmission pipe.
Okay, another question here.
I have a question about deferred maintenance of a property. If you have a property owner that doesn't maintain the property, for example, you have a neighbor who has an overgrown yard, and just recently, the palm tree right next to the post caught on fire and caused our power lines to all go down on the block. Is there anything the city can do about that, or?
So the reason we have this slight discussion up here is it's a question of who handles it. It actually would be none of us, but you could contact the city marshal's office. The city marshal's office, they take care of what's called the property maintenance code, which is all your health and it's high weeds and grass, things like that, sanitation issues. So city marshal's office could help you with that.
Okay, I want to repeat a couple of questions that came up last night for the chief or Chris to answer. One about pressure at fire hydrants has come up a couple of times. You all want to talk about how that's done and who handles that and all that kind of stuff?
I'll touch on it a little bit. Yes, so the question was the maintenance on our hydrants and the water pressure like that. And even the city manager had called me and asked if I asked for to bump up the pressure from Public Works. And we did not. And I'll specifically say for the ball fire, for the ball house, we did not ask for any more pressure because we had adequate pressure from the multiple hydrants we used. We even used one of our bigger trucks, our ladder trucks that shoot out a lot more water than the rest of them, and they all performed just as they're supposed to. So no, we didn't ask for a bump up in pressure. As far as maintenance, the Galveston Fire Department used to take care of all the maintenance for our fire hydrants on the island. But there are programs now that Public Works uses. Now they take care of the fire hydrants. They actually start from one end of the island and they just keep going until they finish. And then guess what? They start right back over again. But if you ever see a hydrant, or if we see something that just doesn't look right, or it looks old, or there's a lot of rust, or it's corroded, or maybe it just you see it's leaking, make sure and call us, because we have a great relationship with our Public Works director. And all it takes is a phone call and they get back to us and they're on it. They stop what they're doing, they go and maintain that hydrant. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. You can definitely go through Chief Harrison, the 3870 number, and they'll redirect you to one of us. Absolutely.
Okay, and another one question that came out last night. I know you talked about blankets, Chris. Do you want to talk about those things that you put on your stove or something? Additional.
Thank you. So last night, one of the questions asked, since the number one cause of fire is kitchen fires in America, is there anything I can do? Like in a commercial kitchen, you have the hood system and has a suppression built in, but can I do that at my house? If you have a hood over your stove at home, there are these canisters, and I believe they're called fire stop canisters. It is a magnetic canister. Think like the old Jiffy Pop popcorn with the expandable foil. This is full of a fire suppressing material. Thank you. That has a slight foil bottom, and if it gets too hot, something catches on fire on your stove, it will burn the bottom of that away and dump basically a fire extinguisher on it. And you don't even have to be standing there, which I hope you are, because unattended cooking is the reason that we're having these fires anyway. That online retailers, one that begins with an A and is very popular, and you can find them online real easily. That fire stop canister is the one that I'm familiar with. We had a local architect that actually spec'd them in a high-rise renovation that we did. In addition to a sprinkler system, they put these in every kitchen, and we haven't had an issue with them yet. So, and it just hangs up there.
Okay, I think we had the other question that came up last night. Were there any grants for home residential fire sprinkler systems? And there are none. Catherine and I have talked about this. I do think we need to start investigating some more incentives and maybe some potential of maybe writing down some of those expenses for eligible homeowners and properties. I can't think of another thing that came up last night that we haven't answered. You guys got anything? I think we did. Okay, so thank you all again for coming. We really appreciate it. There are some of these things on our website. You can check back, and then you have some tremendous resources right here. They're very generous and they're very supportive, and they want to do the right thing for Galveston. So thank you all very much.